Welcome back to our channel in the dim hours before dawn on a rain-slick October morning in 1955. The Philadelphia Mint's cavernous coin room thrummed like an iron heart. Copper P. Levittown houses rose on former farmland, teenagers bopped to rock and roll, and pocket change slipped easily through jukebox slots. Outwardly everything ran to schedule, yet that night an unnoticed misstep threaded chaos into routine. A single working die, destined to strike 1 cent pieces bearing Abraham Lincoln's profile, received its second hub impression a fraction off alignment. The steel surface recorded 2 overlapping images: the date, the maxim "In God We Trust," and the word liberty, all lay doubled, skewed by the width of a pencil line. No alarm sounded. The die passed inspection, was hardened, and mounted in press number 44 by a sleepy technician who simply tightened the bolts and moved on. Hours later, dressed in brown coveralls, Catherine Bell, the Mint's only female night shift inspector, noticed faint halos around the date on a handful of cents. The planchets were still hot from striking, so ghosting often occurred. She shrugged, brushed a curl from her eyes, and tossed the coins into a hopper marked accepted. By mid-shift, thousands more error cents had joined them, indistinguishable in coppery sea. When sunrise melted through high windows, press operators clocked out, the day crew arrived, and pallets of bagged pennies headed to armored trucks bound for Federal Reserve branches in New York and Boston. There was no memo, no reprimand, only a silent promise that something extraordinary now jingled among the ordinary. 3 years passed before anyone cared. In July 1958, on the outskirts of Springfield, Massachusetts, a young line cook named Jerry Atkins sat at the back booth of the Dixie Diner counting tips from his evening shift. He flattened a stack of pennies across Formica, intending to roll them and exchange for quarters. One coin refused to lie flat. Its date shimmered strangely. He thumbed it closer to the neon sign above the pie case and felt a jolt, almost dizziness. The whole obverse looked doubled, as if 2 shadows clung to every letter. Jerry was no numismatist. His entire coin knowledge came from folding change into cigarette packs. Yet instinct insisted this set was wrong in a way that mattered. He carried it home wrapped inside a matchbook. For days, Jerry studied it beneath the only magnifying glass he owned, hoping for explanation. Weeks crawled by until an envelope returned bearing the editor's terse reply. Possible double die, highly unusual. Consider professional authentication. Jerry's pulse thundered. Professional? Authentication? Such words felt worlds away from grill grease and night shifts, but curiosity outweighed common sense. He packed the coin inside a sock, buried it under clothes in a shoebox, and walked the 10 blocks to Frankel's Jewelry and Loan, where, rumor claimed, an old man could evaluate coins for a modest fee. Meyer Frankel stooped, silver-haired, glasses thick as bottle bottoms, peered at the penny beneath a stereo microscope. He uttered a quiet whistle, then another. When he finally glanced up, his eyes glimmered like polished onyx. "Young man," he said, "either you're exceptionally lucky or the Mint's quality control took a holiday in 1955. He explained what a double die obverse entailed, how the die itself, not the coin, bore duplicated images, and how such errors, when dramatic, skyrocketed in desire. He cited the famed 1937 D 3-legged buffalo nickel and the 1942/1 Mercury dime. Then he offered Jerry $50 on the spot. A week's wages for a penny. Jerry's knees nearly buckled, yet instinct whispered again, "Wait." He thanked Meyer, pocketed the cent, and stepped into August sunlight with his heart galloping. Word spread along hazy channels: coin clubs, barbershop gossip, whispered rumors at Saturday swap meets. People began checking their change, holding pennies to porch lights, seeking doubled letters visible even to untrained eyes. By early 1959, dealers confirmed multiple examples centered in New England, reinforcing the belief that most had left the Mint in one shipment through the Boston Federal Reserve. Estimates varied: 20,000, 24. None agreed, but consensus grew that surviving high-grade pieces were far scarcer. Prices climbed. $5 for a VS specimen, $20 for an AU, ridiculous sums whispered for any brilliant red gem. Jerry watched the frenzy from a respectful distance. His single cent now graded 55 Australian dollars by the fledgling annex service sat locked inside an enamel bread box behind canned tomatoes. Offers arrived. 60, 80, then $100 plus $2 silver sweetener. Each time Jerry paused, thought of rent, but held back, sensing the story still unfolding. The plot thickened one muggy evening at the Springfield Numismatic Society's monthly gathering. A bespectacled postal clerk named Edna Pierce presented a freshly discovered double die. Under fluorescent tubes her coin gleamed bright mint red, every doubled element crisp like twin engravings. Gasps circled the tables. A collector in horn-rimmed glasses blurted, "MS-63 at least." That night Jerry realized the ceiling of value sat far higher than his penny's tin-top hiding place. He also realized competition would soon intensify. Through the 60s, as Beatlemania surged and Apollo rockets chased lunar dreams, the 1955 double die gained mythic status. Coin publications dubbed it the King of Lincoln cents. In 1965, when clad coinage replaced silver, collectors dove into minor varieties seeking refuge, and the 55 DDOs starred in every price guide. Jerry's penny insured now for $600 traveled with him when he moved to Providence. Stashed inside a hollowed Bible on the mantle. A pivotal twist arrived in 1974. The respected firm Stax organized an auction featuring the Norwood collection, rumored to contain the finest known 1955 double die in blazing MS-65. The catalog photo mesmerized bidders. Sharply doubled letters, copper luster like sunset on polished brass. When the gavel fell at $1,600, headlines followed. Regional papers marveled, penny fetches fortune. Jerry clipped every article, hard drumming with vindication. He vowed to have his coin reevaluated. Postal delays and grading backlogs dragged months, but when the slab returned, the new designation read MS-62RB. Surface preservation better than first thought, enough to jolt its insurance value over $2,000. Jerry, now married with a toddler, calculated down payments and college funds each time he cradled the plastic holder. Yet he still couldn't sell. The penny had become an heirloom of luck and grit. Meanwhile, counterfeiters entered the stage. Basement chemists etched fake doubles, while press operators in the Caribbean struck die-altered replicas. Grading services tightened authentication. Reputable dealers insisted on slabs. This danger perversely boosted genuine coins' rarity, reaffirmed by fear. By 1981, high-grade examples breached $5,000. By 1988, the apex Euro bullion craze, an MS-65 red hammered at $24,000. The figure circulated on evening news, prompting grandparents to upturn cookie tins nationwide. But every saga needs a revelation. It came courtesy of archivist Lena Vasquez, hired in 1995 by the National Numismatic Archive to index decades of mint correspondence. Deep inside a mislabeled folio, she discovered carbon copies of telegrams sent between Philadelphia Superintendent Sidney Schofield and Treasury auditors dated October 4 to 5, 1955. The messages referenced abnormal die doubling incident, press number 44, and ordered immediate die destruction. Attached was a crate shipping manifest listing one working die, Class 2 offset, scheduled for steel scrap. Schofield's scribbled margin note read, "If error reached distribution, retrieval impossible, advise stand down." Until Lena's find, historians assumed the mint never documented the slip. Her discovery confirmed not only internal panic but also that only a single die produced the infamous cents, anchoring survivor estimates firmly around 24,000, few relative to $500 million cents struck that year. Publication of the telegrams in the Numismatic Chronicle reinvigorated the market. Prices surged again. An MS-64RD fetched $48,300 at a heritage sale in 1999. The same grade doubled by 2006. Jerry, now graying, attended that auction incognito, curiosity outweighing caution. Watching frantic paddle raises, he felt equal parts pride and disbelief. The cent he'd found beneath diner neon now rivaled classic gold in value. One October morning in 2011, while organizing papers for retirement, Jerry finally resolved to part with his coin. Grandchildren's tuition loomed, and sentiment couldn't trump necessity. He contacted Heritage, who arranged imaging, provenance notes, and lot placement in their January signature auction. The listing highlighted Jerry's 53-year stewardship, a real-life thread connecting working-class America to numismatic legend. Pre-sale estimates whispered $75,000 to $90,000, but no one could predict final hammer. Auction night, velvet-draped stage, spotlights glinting off acrylic displays. Bidding opened at $50,000, leaping in $5,000 stride 65, 70, 80. Jerry, seated beside his daughter, clenched damp palms. The room crackled with restless whispers. At $95,000, 2 floor bidders remained. Phone agents murmured into headsets. In the quiet hum of 1956, when the United States was caught between the shadows of a recent war and the booming promise of post-war prosperity, coins were more than just currency. They were silent witnesses to an evolving nation. The wheat penny, still bearing the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln and framed by a pair of symbolic wheat ears on its reverse, stood as a testament to American resilience. That year, the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced millions of these copper cents, never suspecting that hidden among the ordinary were a few misstrikes that would rewrite the coin's legacy. No grand announcement ever accompanied their minting. No headlines blared of a monumental error. Instead, the copper slipped through the presses, unnoticed and unremarkable, at least at first. The coins were supposed to be flawless, bearing the clean and deliberate marks of a nation well-versed in minting excellence. Yet something slipped, something small enough to escape detection but large enough to ripple through decades. Years later, tucked into a modest wooden box, buried beneath piles of pennies sorted by dates and mint marks, a collector named Harold Langley would stumble upon what appeared, at first glance, to be just another 1956 wheat penny. He had been combing through thousands, fingers blackened with age and copper, eyes tired but determined. He wasn't seeking treasure. He was hunting anomalies, anything that broke the rhythm of routine. This particular coin caught the light in a curious way. Not brighter, not shinier, but doubled. The letters of Liberty and the phrase, "In God We Trust," looked ever so slightly echoed, as if someone had gently nudged the die mid-strike. Harold leaned closer, magnifier in hand, his pulse beginning to stir. It wasn't the usual wear or shadow. It was something far more intentional, more accidental. The doubling was clearest in Liberty and 1956, and one seen could not be unseen. Harold knew of the infamous 1955 double die cent, a mistake so profound it had become legend among numismatists. But this was 1956. No known errors of this type had been recorded. At least, not widely. Harold didn't sleep that night. The coin rested on his desk, its subtle flaw growing heavier with each passing hour. He reached out to trusted fellow collectors, then cautiously to coin grading services. Submitting the penny was like sending a piece of himself into the void, but it returned certified. Not just genuine, but a double die obverse. A rare variant. The implications stunned him. The numismatic world responded slowly. Unlike the 1955 error, which had been discovered in rolls directly from banks, the 1956 double die wasn't part of a known batch. It wasn't widely reported. It emerged as an anomaly of an anomaly. Scarcity, in this case, became a double-edged sword. There were no stories of kids finding them in pocket change. There were no boxes filled with errors. There was only speculation, but scarcity also meant value, provided the right collectors were paying attention. Initially, the penny's worth barely tickled the $100 mark. After all, it wasn't in textbooks. Auction houses hadn't yet clutched it to their chests. But whispers grew. Articles emerged. And when a second specimen surfaced, it sold quietly for $450. A few years later, a third changed hands in a private sale for more than $1,000. The market had begun to pulse. What made this coin so curious wasn't just the doubling, though it was crisp and undeniable. It was the timing. 1956 was a year where the U.S. Mint had exercised tighter control, having been burned the previous year by the 1955 blunder. That such an error could slip through again in the very next cycle suggested either a recurrence of negligence or the limitations of human oversight. Either way, it felt almost conspiratorial. The coin's surfaces often bore a telltale satin sheen, indicative of early die states. This suggested that the doubling occurred early in the life of a specific die pair, possibly caught and destroyed before many coins escaped. Some experts speculated that no more than a few dozen examples could exist, scattered like forgotten relics in old collections or jars of change lost in attics. By the mid-1980s, the coin had attracted a small cult following. Numismatic forums, still in their infancy, buzzed with rumors. A dealer in Ohio claimed to have found one embedded in a bulk lot from an estate. Another was allegedly spotted at a coin show in San Francisco, but vanished before anyone could confirm it. The legend built itself. By the 1990s, the price surged. One certified MS-64 example fetched over $4,000 at a niche auction. Bidders were cautious, but intrigued. Unlike more common errors that flooded the market and diluted themselves, the 1956 double die stayed aloof, unbothered by abundance. And then came the twist. In 2003, an archivist working in the backroom of a shuttered numismatic shop in Baltimore unearthed a logbook dated 1956 from the Philadelphia Mint. Scribbled in pencil beside routine notations were several entries marked "Die rotation adjustment" and "Press halt for die pair B42." The notations didn't clarify much, but the timing aligned. Even more compelling was a blurred photo stapled beside it, an internal shot of a double die impression used for in-house training. It looked remarkably similar to Harold's coin. The implications set the collecting world ablaze. If the Mint had documented it, even unofficially, then this wasn't just a random flaw. It was a traceable mistake, one acknowledged behind closed doors, but never publicly addressed. And more importantly, it suggested the Mint may have actively tried to suppress its emergence by destroying the dies early. Suddenly, Harold's coin wasn't just a rare double die. It was part of a hidden story, a nearly lost chapter of U.S. Mint history. Collectors scrambled to re-examine their 1956 cents. Dozens of hopefuls flooded grading services. Yet only a handful were confirmed. By 2010, only 7 verified examples existed. The highest graded 1MS-66 red sold for $17,200 in a dramatic bidding war that stunned even seasoned dealers. But rarity was only one thread of its allure. The coin became a symbol, a whisper from a time when machinery and man shared an uneasy alliance. When one small vibration, one misaligned setup, could birth something extraordinary. Harold, now older and semi-retired, often reflected on how that one coin altered his path. He never set out to make history. But the copper disc with its doubled whispers did just that. He later discovered that the die pair responsible had been replaced within weeks of use. Its limited run curtailed before the flaw could propagate. No one knows exactly how many 1956 double dies are left to be discovered. Each year, another story emerges. A flea market find, a passed-down collection, a child sorting change for fun. Some are false alarms, mere shadows of doubling, mechanical or optical illusions. But once in a while, the real thing appears, and the world of numismatics holds its breath. Today, the 1956 double die wheat penny occupies a peculiar place. It isn't as famed as its 1955 predecessor. It doesn't have the media coverage or the folklore. But for those who know, it is a masterpiece of chance. An echo of an era meant to be silenced, but that found its voice decades later. Even now, there's talk of more variations. Some claim to have found slight repunching in the mint mark of Denver minted 1956 D pennies, though consensus hasn't crystallized. Theories abound. What if more double dies exist, still waiting? What if Harold's find was just the beginning, not the end? The coin continues to be studied. Technology has allowed better imaging, detailed die tracking, and metallurgical analysis. Each confirmed example deepens the mystery. No definitive tally exists. No final chapter has been written. And so, the search continues. Not in grand bank vaults or auction houses, but in the hands of the curious. In rolls of coins purchased on a whim. In dusty boxes unearthed in basements. Because the 1956 double die isn't just about the money or the metal. It's about the possibility. The chance that, hidden in plain sight, something exceptional still waits to be found. A penny, yes. But in its copper depths, a story too rich to be measured in cents alone. In 1958, the world was changing fast. The United States was on the cusp of a new era, straddling the line between post-war optimism and the shadow of a looming Cold War. It was the year NASA was formed, the year Elvis Presley was drafted into the Army, and the year when the U.S. Mint quietly struck the last of its Lincoln wheat pennies without fanfare, without warning. For over 4 decades, the wheat ears on the reverse of the penny had been a familiar symbol, first introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's centennial birthday. But 1958 would mark the final chapter of that design, a transition sealed with the stroke of countless dies in the Philadelphia and Denver mints. At first glance, the 1958 wheat penny seemed ordinary. More than 250 million were struck that year, more than enough to suggest this coin would never be rare, never be treasured, never be whispered about in hushed tones among collectors. Copper-plated zinc, bearing Lincoln's solemn profile, with the wheat reverse that had become almost invisible to everyday Americans. A coin made for commerce, for vending machines, for gum wrappers and parking meters. Yet somewhere within that sea of identical pieces, fate had carved out something else, something unexpected. Something that, for a long time, remained hidden from view. It wasn't unearthed in a government vault or in the gloved hands of a professional numismatist poring over proofs. No, the moment came much more quietly, under the hum of a desk lamp in a modest suburban home, years after the coin had entered circulation. The collector wasn't anyone of note, just a dedicated enthusiast named Harold, who had made a habit of checking his pocket change after every grocery run. He kept a magnifying glass by the window and a worn copy of the Red Book on the shelf. Most nights, his finds amounted to nothing more than spare change and smudged coins too dull to keep. But this night would be different. Harold tilted the penny under the light, watching the copper glint beneath the lens. He wasn't looking for anything special, just another wheat penny to add to the hundreds already stacked neatly in coin tubes. But as he focused on the date, his eyes narrowed. He leaned in closer. The numbers 1, 9, 5, and 8 seemed strangely pronounced. Then it hit him. There weren't just 4 digits on that face. There were 8. A second set of the year, faint but unmistakable, shadowed just behind the first. His hands trembled slightly as he blinked, then refocused. 2 dates. A double die. The implications unraveled in his mind slowly, methodically. A double die meant that the die itself had been misaligned during creation, resulting in a ghostly, overlapping image of mistake that should never have passed inspection. But here it was, as clear as day. He checked again, comparing it to others in his collection. No coin looked like this one. Not even close. Could it be an anomaly? A trick of the light? He needed a second opinion. He sent the penny to a reputable coin grading service, half convinced they'd send it back with a dismissive note. But when the response arrived weeks later, the message was different. It was precise, specific. 1958 double die obverse. Extremely rare. Genuine. Harold was stunned. The grading confirmed what he'd barely dared to believe. This was no ordinary error. It was a rarity of immense significance. And not just because it was unique, because it was virtually unheard of. For years, collectors had documented double dies from earlier years, 1955 being the most famous, but no such example from 1958 had ever made its way into the public spotlight. Until now, word spread slowly, then all at once. Whispered at coin shows, hinted at in collectors' forums, speculated about in newsletters. Was there really a double die from 1958? If so, how many existed? Theories bloomed like wildfire. Some insisted it had to be a die trial, a fleeting test that escaped the mint by accident. Others believed it was struck during a rare moment of oversight, a malfunction deep within the mint's intricate system. But no matter the theory, one fact remained unshakable. The coin was real. As interest grew, so did the coin's value. Offers trickled in, first a few $100s, then a few thousand. Harold declined each one. He wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. Over the next few years, more specimens were reported, but not many. Fewer than 5 confirmed examples would ever surface. Some in private collections, one rumored to have been held by a mint employee's descendant. Each new appearance only fueled the fire, pushing the value higher. By the early 2000s, the coin had become almost mythical among error collectors. It didn't just represent a mistake, it represented the end of an era. The final year of the wheat penny. The last chance for an error of this kind to occur before the coin's reverse would be changed forever to the Lincoln Memorial design. And yet, despite its significance, the 1958 double die remained a whisper in the grand halls of numismatics, overshadowed by its more famous cousins from 1955 and 1969, yet more elusive than either. But what truly set it apart wasn't just its scarcity, it was the nature of the error itself. The doubling on the obverse wasn't mild or subtle. It was pronounced. The entire date and the word, Liberty, displayed unmistakable doubling, with the letters almost appearing as if they were vibrating off the coin's surface. This wasn't a case of die deterioration or machine doubling. This was a classic, bold double die, forged by a second misalignment during the hubbing process. And somehow, it had slipped through. Then came the twist that no one saw coming. In 2018, a private collector preparing to auction his estate revealed a 1958 double die he'd purchased in the 1970s, decades before the error was officially recognized. But the coin wasn't listed in any known registry, and its characteristics didn't match the few certified examples. The doubling was present, yes, but it was different. Sharper. Cleaner. There was no doubt it was a double die, but this one was unique even among the unique. Experts were brought in. Theories clashed. Could there be more than one double die variety from 1958? Had there been multiple flawed dies that year, quietly discarded without record? Or was this an earlier stage in the hubbing process, a transitional strike that had somehow been captured mid-correction? For months, debate raged behind closed doors. The coin was submitted to a top-tier grading lab, which, after exhaustive analysis, confirmed what had previously been unthinkable. It was a second, undocumented variety of the 1958 double die. This wasn't just rare, it was singular. A one-of-one. The numismatic world reeled. If one such die had escaped detection for over 60 years, what else might be out there? Hidden in collections, tucked away in attics, misidentified in coin jars? Collectors who had once passed over 1958 wheat pennies began pulling them back into the light, re-examining them under high-powered lenses. Hope surged. Maybe, just maybe, another would surface. And then came the prize.at, an exclusive auction held in Chicago. Bidding opened with a whisper, but escalated quickly. Phone lines lit up. Private collectors, institutions, and even a foreign museum competed. The final hammer fell at a staggering some $336,000. A copper coin worth less than a gumball in its day, now rivaling the price of a house. But for many, the value wasn't just in the price tag. It was in the story, the forgotten error from the twilight of an era, the quiet coin that defied expectations. And perhaps most hauntingly, the reminder that within even the most common objects, mysteries can hide in plain sight. The 1958 double-die wheat penny remains one of the most elusive treasures in American numismatics. Not for its flashiness or notoriety, but for its subtle defiance of fate. Minted in silence, discovered in humility, and valued beyond measure, it continues to whisper its legacy to those willing to listen.